Let's move on to the next panel, consumer discovery, or how can you take over the Facebook newsfeed until it is nothing but advertisements? I think that's the question here. No, I'm just kidding. Let's bring up onto the stage now our moderator, Brian Blau, Research Director at Gartner. There he is. And his panel, Jory Des Jardins, co-founder and president of strategic alliances for BlogHer, Vince Sollitto, vice president of corporate communications and government relations for Yelp, and Will Young, director of Zappos San Francisco. Take it away, guys.
Wow, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the great introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Blau. I'm research director at Gartner, and I want to say, first off, thanks to Julie. Great conference so far. Really happy to be here to talk about social discovery today. I think it's a topic that is really important. People talk about social discovery, they talk about social, but the topic itself of social discovery is not central. And I think sort of coming together today, a lot of industry leaders, a lot of practitioners, and the investors too, I think it's a lot of great information. First, I wanted to just introduce myself, talk a little bit about what I do, and then we're going to dive into the panel and the questions. So I work at Gartner in the Consumer Technology Group, and our main focus is to look at a broad array of consumer technologies from software to hardware. We report on it. The group that I work in is in, I was just telling these guys, in some 10 different countries, so we really have a global look. Consumer is a little bit new at Gartner. We've been doing it 2 or 3 years in earnest, and it's really fascinating to be sort of at the center of a social universe that's really exploding. Part of the technologies that I cover are consumer social networks, things like social analytics. I also work a little bit on video games and I cover some other technologies too. And I wanted to tell one story first before we get going that's really directly related to social discovery. And so yesterday, I was at the E3 conference in Los Angeles. So E3, for those of you that don't know, is one of the largest conferences for video games. And this particular conference is about game content. So all the games are being introduced this year. Had a chance to get a preview of a game called Watch Dogs from Ubisoft. And this brand new game is really all about social discovery. So the premise is that in, I think it was 2004, there was a massive blackout of 50+ million people in the New York area, which actually really happened. And what happened after that blackout is the story. And so the city and state government came in. They mandated for civil protection that everybody had to go online, become very social, put all of your data there. And the protagonist in the story sort of hacked into the city government database. So he basically had access to everybody's personal data. Not only could he sort of look at your Facebook profile, but he knew where you lived, how much you made, or any time you've been in jail or said anything weird online. And the game's presence was that you don't really need social discovery because this guy had access to all of your data in any case. So I thought that was kind of an interesting story when I saw that yesterday. So check it out, called Watch Dogs from Ubisoft. So there we go, a little bit about myself and kind of fun thing that I saw yesterday. So I wanted to introduce this great panel we've got here. So maybe we could just go down the line, spend a minute or two, talk about yourself, just introduce the company that you work for, and we'll take it from there.
Great. Hi, I'm Jory Des Jardins. It's French, and it's okay. If people think it's Spanish too, it's French. And I'm co-founder of BlogHer. We are a blog community and network. And I'm so happy to be part of this panel because I think people rule out blogs as a source of social discovery. And we've been at this now for 7 years. For us, our movement is into social discovery. That is the next place for blogs to go. So my role specifically is to work with our larger partners, larger brands that are trying to figure the space out, and how do we get to the influencers. And increasingly, that's becoming a technical situation, but the one thing that blogs have over any other form of technology is the influence. It is the most, and we'll talk a bit more about this, but we know that bloggers are the most influential of the digital influencers, if you will, because they do use every single platform that is available to them. So our role, and my role, has been trying to figure out how we take that influence from all of those different platforms that they use to get the most relevant kernel of knowledge. So we really do have a lot that we want to share. in terms of how bloggers play a role, because they're not just bloggers anymore, they're social influencers. Thanks.
Cool.
So I'm Vince from Yelp, and I'm happy to be here representing the end of the alphabet along with my friend from Zappos. This is a great conference and a great subject for social discovery. I think Yelp is probably one of the first and earliest forms of social discovery on the web, particularly for consumer products and services. And ironically enough, you may not know this, but we actually discovered the concept of social discovery while trying to build the service. I wasn't there at the time when they founded it back in 2004. But Yelp started as in a sense, almost an email recommendation service. The idea was, I may not know a great doctor or a great place to go, but my friends probably do. And maybe we can set up a platform where you can submit a query, and then we'll contact your friends and ask if anybody has any recommendations they can send you. And pretty soon we realized that that was very spammy. Folks didn't like being pinged with questions they didn't know the answer to. It made them feel dumb. And as a result, we had to completely pivot around the platform, and we looked and discovered that, in fact, the one area of the site that was booming was this little link way down on the inside of the site, buried, where you could write your own review of a particular establishment unsolicited. So maybe nobody asked you how to use the service, but you can go ahead and just do that. And that kind of blossomed, and ironically enough, that's really what we turned around and formed the business around. I'm the head of corporate communications and government relations, and as of our IPO in March, investor relations. And so I'm just delighted to be here and looking forward to hearing from my fellow panelists about their own social discovery stories.
Thanks.
How y'all doing? My name's Will. I'm with Zappos. I actually started and ran a small Zappos San Francisco office. A lot of you might know Zappos started in San Francisco, and actually Nick here, the original founder of Zappos, I'm not sure. I'm kind of blind up here, so I don't know where he is. But Zappos moved to Vegas in 2005. It's where we really grew the company. And as we've gotten pretty big and luckily pretty successful, we want to kind of re-get that startup feel. So we opened up a small San Francisco office. We've been back in San Francisco for about a year now. And we really focus in our office on kind of new emerging technologies and different ways people might want to shop. So retail is obviously a huge industry, but really pushing things like social, mobile, emerging technologies is what we're focused on. Pretty fun job. And separately, I'm also a general partner in the Vegas Tech Fund, which is a new venture fund that started by Tony, our CEO, and a couple other people in Zappos. Even though I live in San Francisco, the Vegas Tech Fund's goal is to really kind of make downtown Las Vegas a huge tech community. So we're funding startups who want to be part of growing a tech community there.
Perfect, thanks. All right, first question for everybody. So I want to start off maybe with Vince first and say, what is your definition of social discovery? And relate that directly to the business. And what does it mean for your business and your product? Maybe you can cite some examples, how it's been used, where you found successes. It's kind of a broad question, but sort of dive in and what is your definition?
Sure. Well, it's a great question. It's a broad question, but in a sense, it's also inherently narrow in focus in that the way we think about social discovery is it really is inherently our entire company. It is our business. That's really what we do. So social discovery means to me is people I don't necessarily know or know well helping me find what I'm looking for. And in a sense, that's exactly what Yelp tries to do, which is that we try to let you be guided by, in a sense, the hive mind, the crowdsource. You don't need to worry about having too small a circle of close associates. You can rely on the vast universe of folks that have contributed content around the site. And so for us, it's really influenced everything we do within the business and the product is how do we facilitate more contribution? How do we get more information? How do we pull more information from the community in the form of content, reviews, tips, check-ins, pictures? Everything becomes a data point and it becomes a vote in a sense, and you can aggregate all that information to help people discover the best business in their community. So that's what it means to me. That's what it means to our business, and it is core and essential to our business. And everything we do is designed to encourage and influence that.
Will, same question.
Social discovery to us is we're still figuring out. I think if you ask a lot of retailers, no one's really doing social discovery super well. Even Amazon, our overlords, they do a lot of good things, But when I look at my Amazon social recommendations, it's been recommending Lady Gaga and The Hangover for the last year and a half. And it's tough. It's a really tough problem. So we're still figuring it out. A couple examples of things Zappos has tried. One good and one not so good. So we try, and it's interesting because if you think of retail, shopping is one of the most social things we do sometimes. But online, it's just crazy hard. And one of the things we tried implementing was a Facebook-style chat on Zappos. So it's like you could, like, hey, message your friends, SMS them, have them help you shop. And that lasted on our site for maybe a couple months. People used it, but no one responded. Because it's kind of that thing, if you're staring at this little chat window, what's your attention span of waiting for someone to say, that shirt looks great, or those shoes look great? Maybe 20 seconds. But you get an SMS, are you really going to drop everything to go to the Zappos website and tell your friend what you think? So that's why social's kind of hard online to crack. So that's one thing that I think was not so great. One thing that we've done out of our office here, it's not rocket science, but one of the things we implemented is just share your order socially after you make your purchase. That's a huge point of discovery, right? It's something we do in everyday life. We bought something, we want to brag about it. So we initially launched it, share your order on Facebook or Twitter. Kind of, again, not rocket science, but we learned a ton from it. Right away, we saw about 75% of people who want to share would rather share on Facebook than on Twitter. But in the aggregate, not a lot of people want to share their order, which is okay. We're not forcing anyone to. It seems like bragging a little bit. But then we launched Share Your Order on Pinterest. And kind of no surprise, but the day we launched it, more people wanted to share their order on Pinterest than Facebook and Twitter combined, like the first day we launched it. But then what's interesting thing about that is, again, our office is all about kind of learning from the data. What we saw is, although we had this huge volume of people sharing their orders on Pinterest, and I'm not saying Pinterest isn't great. I love Pinterest. I think it's fantastic, but it didn't really convert to sales. So I'll just throw out a couple concrete numbers. So people were 13 times more likely to pin their order than to tweet their order, and 8 times more likely to share their order on Facebook than to tweet their order. But from a sales perspective, tweets generated 4 times as much revenue as Pinterest and 2 times as much revenue as Facebook. So to throw actually a dollar amount on that, for every time someone tweeted an order, that actually generated about $33 in sales. So interesting, right? But it's such a small percentage of how people are sharing. Every time someone pinned their order, it was about 75 cents. So from an order of magnitude, that's huge. So that's actually what our office is kind of really focused on, because we don't really know how people want to do this stuff. So we're just trying stuff, learning, measuring.
Nice. That's good info. We've got to love the stats. So, I mean, just a quick comment about, analytics and stats. It really seems to drive a lot of what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So maybe we could talk about that in a second. But, so Jory, so really interested in what you have to say, because you have a really different type of business than the other panelists.
So for us, social discovery is finding inspiration through social channels. And every year we do a state of the social media study. And we've done it with Nielsen in the past. And we go out to thousands of readers. We have about 40 million readers across our network. So we get a really good read of what digital influencers are thinking, female digital influencers. And every year we get the same piece of insight. 87%, the year before it was 80%, now it's 87%, have bought something based on the recommendation of another blogger, someone they read. We did another study where we asked them, who do you trust more, a magazine editor or no offense, a traditional media expert or a blogger? And 2 to 1, actually it was more like 2 to 0.75 said, I trust a blogger because of just that connection that they already have. So we know that there's this huge trust, this huge amount of trust that readers place in bloggers and in digital influencers. Now the question has been how to extrapolate that. And I think, Will, you make a great point. We're still trying to figure out what is the way to extrapolate that trust. But for us, that's what social discovery is. It's taking that trust and using that as the key insight. And how do you bring that trust to the fore with technology? Well, certainly trust is a big issue these days, privacy issues and whatnot. And how do you trust your friends, your neighbors? How do you trust your influencers? It's a great point. So the next question I have, I'm going to slightly go off topic a little bit and say, take off your sort of corporate hat. You take off the hat that you wear every day. And if you were starting a new business today, why is social discovery important?
You think about the audience of the consumer, and where is the sweet spot there? Why do you think it's important? Should it be central to the business? Anyway, just some of your thoughts on that. Maybe you can go first.
Sure. So I think what's missing from this whole equation is context. I think that we have a lot of technology behind finding that recommendation, but if we don't have the context to begin with, it's very difficult. I think Facebook has got great reach. I think people recommend on Facebook, but if you don't have that context, why are you going to Facebook to find out that information? We know, for example, that blogs are the number one place where people will take the advice, but not everyone's going to blogs. It's very difficult to extract that information. So if I had to develop a product, it would be all about providing technology around the context so that I get it when I need it, I get it from the most trusted sources, and then I can buy it. And that is something that I think Pinterest that's their next step.
Yeah, I like that. So trust, context, get the information when you want it, where you want it. Will?
Sorry, Brian, can you rephrase it?
So the question is, if you were doing something new, say you're going to leave a job, and if you're going to go start something else, social discovery. Why is it important? Sort of in the context that how are you going to build a product, and what does it mean to a brand new product today?
That's right. And so social discovery is important because I think it's actually pretty natural to how people think today. And I think, it's in the early days of e-commerce, and if I was to start a new retail company, like reviews are kind of commodities now and things like that. But really pushing social is how people naturally do it. I think Josh in the previous session is, just try and find things that people are naturally doing and make an amazing experience around that online. And I think there's a huge opportunity in social discovery space there.
Excellent.
When I would think about it is, I would look at it for both the input and the output. Including social discovery and the creation of a new product or service just immediately provides you with a wealth of data and information which you can aggregate. I mean, the concept of big data is obviously very important nowadays. But if you add in this social discovery to the input of your service, you're just getting so much more information that you can then share, and then frankly the distribution channel of social discovery to push your product out there and let folks embrace it, change it, make it better, and comment on it, provide feedback. I just think it's a virtuous cycle and a very helpful loop.
Just a quick reminder, any questions, tweet them to #GlimpsConf. So we'll take those in a few seconds. So next question. What's the problem with social discovery today? So we have a lot of technology. We're all connected on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. But social discovery, there seems to be issues. Maybe Facebook is holding the data hostage. Maybe that people are not trusting enough, as you said. So where do you guys see the core issues around social discovery? And don't be afraid to sort of call out those sort of companies or technologies where you see that there's real issues. Maybe Jory, you want to go first?
Well, I think my perfect technology would be a mashup between Pinterest and Pandora, where there's an algorithm that gets smarter. Right now, there are plenty of algorithms, and I'm always referred to, oh, you bought this, you must like this. No, actually, I don't. So now what? I'm kind of lost. But I need to have a trusted, there's got to be something that will help extrapolate, again, what it is that I'm saying I want, and then making sense of that, and then doing better the next time. And I think we're getting there. I think that's where it's going, but we're not quite there.
Not quite there yet. Vince?
I'll take a slightly different angle on the problem or challenge of social discovery. For us, particularly at Yelp, the biggest challenge of social discovery is attempts to sway, skew, manipulate, and game it to produce, frankly, artificial results or to mislead. Obviously, as social discovery becomes probably the #1 way that consumers discover the next product or service that they want, there's a huge vested interest and incentive in folks that manufacture, produce, or serve that service or product to influence and sway people in their opinions. And so we face on a daily basis, massive attempts to game the system through the use of fake or shill reviews, or folks trying to spam and write tons of reviews, purchase reviews. There's ads on Craigslist all the time about people wanting to buy 50 to 100 reviews, whole mills in India set up for that kind of stuff. So for us, it's keeping social discovery pure and clean so that consumers can benefit from it without being misled by efforts to game it.
It's interesting. I often find that people say one thing online but do something different in real life. So maybe there's a coming together of those two things to make it more honest. Right. Will?
I think one of the big challenges is, again, that thing that's really easy to do in real life. And I'll use one example of what we do in everyday offline life for social discovery is, if I'm about to start a new hobby, say hiking, what do? We think about which of our friends hikes, and then you email that friend and say, John, could you recommend some hiking gear for me? Super easy problem to solve via email. But if you think about an online retailer like Zappos trying to solve that problem, it's actually crazy hard now, because you need your friends to be customers on Zappos, and you need to know a lot about your friends. And anything you do there is actually right. And this is why I think retailers haven't cracked social shopping yet, because anything we try and do as retailers so far is harder than just emailing the friend you already know and asking advice. So I think that's when, our friends at Lululemon over there, we've been talking about this nonstop over the last couple of days, just how do we make that frictionless and solve that problem is a big challenge.
Hey, so I'm going to take a Twitter question here. I think it's really interesting. From the consumer standpoint, from the individual standpoint, what do they want to get out of social discovery? So here we are, we're talking from our business and business goals and things like that. Take off those hats and put on, your home hat and say, what is it that consumers really want out of social discovery, and where do they see the value in it? So Vince?
I think a couple of things. One, I think they want to find the best thing for them. Obviously, they're trying to rely on the group to help point them towards what's seen as the best. I think they also might be trying to find out, what is everybody else buying and why? What am I missing out on? Is there something I'm not aware of? New fads and trends. So I think it's that. It's both popularity and also perfection.
Jory?
I don't have much of a different answer. I think that we want to know who are the trusted sources too, and I think that's something that's also missing from the experience now. Is that's great when I go to Amazon and I see these wonderful reviews, but we can ask people to review something for us and say, hey, please post a good review for me, whether or not they actually mean it. So you want to get the most trusted, and I think that it's a combination actually of kind of what we've been able to build in the blogosphere, coupled with the technology of recommendation.
So here's an interesting question for everybody. We're going to take a crack at this. Out of all the things we talked about today, when you think about social discovery, if you were talking to any individual here, what's like the one takeaway piece of advice that you would give them about social discovery, about how they should implement it, or your one key factor that you say, if you're not going to do anything else with regard to social discovery, do this? Will?
I think the one takeaway I would do is actually, it's not a concrete one, but from an organizational standpoint, you actually have to have a dedicated team on it. And I think social discovery is so hard, and there's so much to learn in it. You can't do it in skunk work projects. You can't do it in 10% time. It needs dedicated teams. Like, again, Lululemon has innovation teams. It's what we try and do in San Francisco, and we've been working on it for a little over a year, and we're still trying to figure stuff out. So I think if you're serious about it, you need to go all in and really dedicate people to it.
Go on. Go big or go home.
Yeah.
Right. Vince?
I think a few things. First of all, never underestimate just how much people want to share virtually everything and anything, and give them as many opportunities to do that. I've always been kind of curious about the fad of checking in, and yet I find that folks that check in at particular places of interest also become the most prolific contributors of all other content. And so while the check-in itself might be somewhat meaningless, maybe on a site like ours, that check-in then drives photo uploads, tips and information being provided. There's a very, very engaged core of user that really shares, and you need to capture that, because that is actually a very small percentage. Folks talk in business about the 80-20 rule, or even the 90-10 rule as far as readers and contributors. We're finding online that it's really much more of the 90-9-1 rule, where maybe 90% are pure readers, but only 1% really are the massive high-intensity content contributors. And if the numbers are large enough, 1% is still a huge number, which is great, but you need to make sure that you capture that 1% core that wants to give you all this information to share, and give them as many opportunities to do so as possible.
So maybe there's a real problem there. I mean, so social is all about sharing, but what you're saying is they're not sharing.
Well, I think you're sharing in different levels, different amounts, in different ways, and you need to. I guess basically what I was saying too is, if you provide more and more opportunities for people to share, you'll be shocked at how many will. And so just recently, we had a feature where we have quick tips that people can write when they're checking in someplace, but we found that maybe half of those tips were folks wanting to comment and engage with the person checking in and just have more social discovery interaction rather than pure recommendations. And so now we've introduced what we call check-in comments, where you can let people engage and talk and discover purely around the fact that you've checked in somewhere rather than write a comment about that place. And as a result, we're seeing both increase.
Jory?
So we stumbled on the answer. We were founded in 2005. It was about blogging and building community, and you never wanted to muss up the blog with recommending products or working with brands. And that's been a relationship we've kind of layered in over time, and it took a long time to kind of get that right. But what we discovered was, as long as we had the community, the trust factor was there, the credibility was there. So I think there's a lot of building and there's a lot of technology which we are absolutely needing to back into, and so it's absolutely necessary. But without establishing the credibility of the sources, you're kind of screwed. You have people recommending, you have people providing review, but there's no sense of trust behind that. So we actually ran a series of tests across blogs where they're starting to recommend products. Now, this was something that it took us years before we felt comfortable doing this. But in every single test that we have run, the sales have gone up or have been greater than a non-blog source, and that's simply because of community and the trust differential. Every time we tried to do this across just a regular source, we've always performed better because of the relationship of the community. So just to back that into something that's actionable, I think you have to worry about that community layer before you worry about the tech layer.
Very interesting. I think we have time for another couple of questions. This came from Twitter, I think. So is there going to be any kind of new medium for social discovery? So right now we're talking about sharing of mainly text type information. Talked about sharing a product when you purchase it or when you visit a restaurant. You're talking about things that are popular in the community. Is there other sort of technology mediums that are important for discovery? The previous panel sort of bashed a little bit on photo sharing. What about video? Is there a promise for social sharing and video in the future?
I definitely think from a medium, there's some amazing, again, going back to the retail space, some amazing style apps like Pose that are doing things like just upload what you're wearing and, huge communities around that. And I think retailers are trying to figure out, I think in the earlier days, retailers are like, well, we look at Pose, we're just going to build that ourselves. And I think retailers are realizing it just doesn't make sense. No one wants to use a Zappos Pose or an Amazon Pose. So I think retailers are really trying to think of, like, how do we now seamlessly integrate into a Pose or into one of these, even Snap Ads or any of these experiences. So I think that's a bigger channel.
Jory, any comments on video for?
Well, I think that no matter what, we have to deal with video, because even in the blogosphere, it's becoming, most of these bloggers at least have dabbled in video and prefer video and get a great majority of their traffic via video. Just by the way, our greatest referrer is Pinterest. Used to be Google, then of course it was Twitter, now it's Pinterest across all of the blogs. No kidding, we're a women's network. But that said, there's got to be a visual component. So I think video plays in. The challenge, though, is extrapolating, once again, the best, what you need from video, because it does take time to review video. We've been playing with it. Certainly people want to see influencers interacting, but it's a little clumsy right now.
Yeah. Well, certainly video tends to make you a bit more authentic, maybe than just the written word. Okay, that's it. Anyway, I think we're out of time. So thanks to all the panelists. Great conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.